Hey, welcome to another episode of Electrical Theology, Esoteric Life Coaching. I am your host, Charles. If you take responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and emotions, you will open up to a whole new universe, or you will open up to the universe. The universe is just one verse, and in the physical realm, it's your verse or your voice. All right, now we're continuing on where we left off last episode. This episode is Sermon 19, Esoteric Remote Viewing. We started touching on the remote viewing last episode where we were able to move from our position into a second position and then into a third position to observe the multiple dimensions. Dimension is diamonds, ions, or two-way communication. And just for those who don't know, any of the suffix or the ending of a word that has A-L, E-L, U-L, anything like that, all refers to God or the Supreme Being or whatever synonym you want to put to it, guys. For me, it just represents the highest frequencies that humans can get in contact with. Right? But we've been talking about the remote viewing, so this was the practice of helping us to begin to transfer our consciousness out of our ape suit and bring it or our awareness into different space suits or space things or space people, right? Because we're all in space. So anything within the space, like any fish can go into any part of the ocean, right? Except again, what you're built for. Not everyone's built for the top of the ocean. Not everyone's built for the bottom of the ocean. But so some humans are capable of going to higher frequencies and some lower frequencies. Neither one's good nor bad. It just depends on your make, your capacity. Okay? So everything we're doing is getting us ready to understand these realms. And in the last video, I just put these sort of circuits or circles within this, because understanding that everything that we're in is within a circuitry. Circuit just means circle, basically. And this is an electrical circuit, so an electrical circle. And in these classes, I'll call them universal divine circuit. So just as you would have a energy source or battery, you would have a line or cable or wire to a light bulb. But that light bulb is not going to light until it has a completed circuit. And once it goes around to the other side of that source, then the source knows which way to go. So our thoughts are the circuitry, and it's up to us to transmit that thought, build a component, our own light bulb, if you will, and then we have to bring that energy down and reconnect it or ground it out to Earth. And then that allows the universal divine circuit, or it allows us to be inside the universal divine circuit, to where we now have a cosmic railroad track or railroad station that we now have laid the track so the universe or our higher self knows that we're ready to receive. And it knows that we're ready to receive because we just built the tracks. Make sense? And so to keep your life on track, we got to continually understand mediumship or your own ship, or how to relate to other people's ship, how to be the mediumship and be able to take other people's information from low or high and then be able to transmutate it, if you will, or transport it or transform it from a high frequency down to a lower frequency, right? Or from a lower frequency to a higher frequency. Cool? But all of this we're still on path. Each one of these are a portal, a gateway, and we'll get into the transportation of ions, or being able to port these ions through these portals. And each one of these are portals. Each one of these we can look at it as a radio station. These are all different, 88.7 all the way up to 106.9, right, up here in the upper right. So these are all radio stations. These are all galactic neighborhoods, frequencies. These are all different dimensions. These are different realms. And each one of these has a unique frequency. So going through this process is going to open you up to communicate, have the ability to communicate with other realms. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to communicate with all these realms. right? You don't need to stop in every town that you pass on a trip from Florida to California. You can if you want. But each one of these sort of have their own sightseeing uniqueness. If you want to stop off, that's great. But just because you can doesn't mean you need to. Because some of these pertain to different abilities, different talents, different purposes, different meanings, as we talked about in the past. So just know that everything that we're doing may not make sense to right now, or all the puzzle pieces aren't fitting together, is because we're still putting it all together. So if you're patient, you'll get the rewards at the end. So as we talked about, being able to allow yourself permission, right? That is that word permission, per your mission, what you're missing ions, by allowing yourself to be in a bilocation, a different location, or tri or quad, or whatever you want to call this location. And it's not really separate locations, you're just expanding your consciousness. And look at this first position as you're beginning to understand yourself, your discipline, your knowledge, and you're beginning to gain insight, and you're beginning to take responsibility for those thoughts, actions, and emotions. And because of that, you're taking in more ions, which is expanding your field. And so your electromagnetic field then grows bigger and bigger. And as it grows bigger into these areas, it's like a bubble around you. The bubble's growing bigger, this electromagnetic bubble, and so eventually it engulfs people, places, and things around you, which means your consciousness can be in that person, place, or thing. We'll talk a little bit later about being able to get or to transpose yourself on another person, place, or thing. It's not about possessing them, it's with their permission. At the same time, you can step into somebody else and see life through their eyes. Again, it doesn't mean you know them, you're just using their eyes, their projectors, to view their reality, right? And the same, you can allow others to come in and transpose themselves into your electromagnetic field. Doesn't mean they're possessing you or taking you over, right? There's protocols that are in place in your magnetic field that won't allow that, but they can transpose it superficially, and they can then see through our eyes what we're seeing. Why is this important? Because sometimes when we're communicating with other realms and dimension beings, that they don't understand our references. And as I may try to connect and with my vocabulary or thought patterns or frequencies or waveforms, I can transform that to or transport that to them. But if they're still not getting it, I can allow them to step into my eyes and then see what it is I'm trying to explain. Right? Again, visual. Just like us, we need multiple different disciplines or ways of gathering information, visually, tactile, smell, taste, whatever. Beings are sort of the same way. Just because they're in a different dimension, they don't know our dimension. So what we're doing is exchanging. We're cosmic exchange students. And we will set up camp for a little bit to observe this. Right? You have people around you or beings around you all the time observing your every move. Right? We'll leave that for another conversation, because that's a whole nother lesson in itself. But let's get on with this. So my point is that as we begin to expand your field, as it grows and whatever that field engulfs, then you have access to that information or the way they form their ions. Right? Hopefully this is making sense. If not, leave me a comment. Let me know how I can do better. All right, so caveat emptor. This is just Latin for buyer beware. So as you get into and exchanging or transposing yourself or transporting yourself into different realms, and again, your consciousness could go there, or your physical body, if you have those abilities to go into, we'll say, inner earth. Inner earth is at a different frequencies. You just can't walk in there with machinery or stuff. It's too thick or too thin, and it vibrates at a totally different frequency. So you have to be there in it for a while, allow your energy to adapt. This means that you have already taken responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and emotions, can control your breathing, your thoughts. And as you adapt to someone else's frequency, then you can transport physically into their realm. Right? It's like walking through outside where it's hot into an air condition. Right? If it's too drastic, it can cause you harm or physicality, your body to react in a certain negative way. Right? So with all these realms, with all these portals and dimensions, are all at different frequencies. The ability of what I'm getting y'all to do is to adapt to these different frequencies. All right? It's the same as getting used to one form of music that you've been around your whole life and then adapting to a totally different style of music. Right? Your body, your cells, everything within your body, your nervous system allows what you like in, but as soon as you open it to a whole totally different beat or frequency, then your body may react negatively, and if you haven't taken responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and emotions, then you may perceive this other music as bad, or that's not music, or something to that effect. But it's just all frequencies, right? Harmonizing in different beats and patterns. Well, this is how it is for the realms out there and other beings. They all have their unique frequencies, so we just have to adapt to their beat, if that makes sense. So some precautions or pre-cause. So we have the effect. We're choosing to go into our life experience is that we are beginning to interpret. Now, interpretation means that I'm adapting into that frequency. I'm interpreting. My body, my cells are interpreting their frequency. And then I can go, okay, I need to amp up my body or slow down my body. Right? My overall physicality, my biomechanical, chemical, and electrical shell. And as I begin to adapt, right, I'm affecting my physical body, so that's going to have a cause, right? It's going to cause something to happen to my body. And as I'm in this dimension, this realm, hanging out with some beings and their frequency, it's going to affect my body. Right? Just as if you go to the beach, right? The beach is going to affect your body. No matter how much showers you take on the beach, you're going to take sand home with you. Make sense? You can be in a fire with smoke and then leave that place, but your clothes and your body will still smell like smoke days later, right? So there's going to be residuals left over from jumping, if you will, or going through portals or adapting to other people's frequencies, realms, and stuff. So just know, and we'll talk about these residuals, and if you want to know more about them, I'll have a whole separate video for that, but just know that there's going to be residuals, and it could be a thickness or a tiredness to your body. It could be your body feels cold or clammy, or you could have like dust on you, right? Some people will call this ectoplasm, but it's just energy left over from their frequency, right? And then occupation, how do we want to occupy those ions, right? We can occupy other people's ions or frequencies or body or shell or ship. All these words are the same to me, guys, and hopefully you're starting to understand this, right? A vessel, ship, they're all just incarnations. I can hop into their car or their vehicle, right, in their nation of ions, right? And I can allow them to come into me. And same thing, if they come into you, then there's going to be a residual. Either way, if you go into them or they into you, both of y'all are going to end up with a residual. Right? And those residuals, if you're not used to it, can seem bad. You may have a cold symptoms for a day or two while your body purges this debris or this residual. And it's just dried up electromagnetism, right? It's nothing possessing you. It's nothing evil. Right? So I just figured I'd just touch on that. If you want to know more, just give me a comment below and we can get into that. All right, so remote viewing, let's break that down because you got paperback psychics and you got paperback remote viewers. And if they don't understand the electro or the esoteric position of what we're doing here, you can be trained in remote viewing to allow your consciousness to see anywhere in the world or get into a person or see papers, see files through someone else's eyes. That's all mechanical. But what I teach is not only the mechanical, but the chemical and the electrical realms, or what you may know as physical, mental, or the spiritual realm. So I can physically go to another location. I can bilocate and be in that location as I'm sitting right here. I can be in another location consciously because, again, my panoptic electromagnetism is broad, so I can tap into anything that my bubble's surrounding, right? So if my bubble can see over in Saudi Arabia or Japan or whatever, then mechanically I have access to that, so I can visually, physically observe what's going on. And now it doesn't mean I know what's going on because, again, interpretation. I can, from my frame of reference, from my being here in the United States, I don't know everyone else's cultures and how I perceive that. So all I can do is just write down and observe what I'm seeing. right, and hearing what kind of conversation, but I have no reference if I don't know that culture, right, or their frame of reference. Electrically, I can go in there, or spiritually, and get my interpretation will be broader, as opposed to just mental or physical, right? The mental realm, I can start picking up on their chemicals, how their energy, what their frequency of their body is, which gives me more information, right? How they form their ions, what that is, their thoughts, their actions, and emotions, how they're emoting or moving their ions, right? So this energy in motion is just energy moving, which remote viewing is just ions, right? I'm viewing the energy in motion, and the more I can interpret this energy that's moving, right? If I see a river, I don't know the river because I'm not a river, right? But if it's flowing very fast and it's coming down very fast, I then can interpret that whatever's down the line from that, be it a neighborhood or a parking lot or street, that it can be flooded, right? I can call someone and say, hey, there's a big flood about to hit your way, get the hell out of there, right? And people are like, no, I don't see anything. No, I don't see it coming. I'm just going to stay here. Okay, fine, stay there. And all of a sudden, here comes this big rush of water, this flood, and it floods them out. And now they're like, oh my God, are you a prophet? No, I was just downstream. And so remote viewing is just remote. Re means again, mote means energy, a moving of energy. And so I can view this moving energy. So a true remote viewer can do the mechanical, the chemical, and the electrical viewing, or the physical, mental, and spiritual, so we can get a broader perspective, right? Someone can say, okay, well, what's in that box? I can remote view and see what's in that. It's just a physical item. Do I know what that, let's say there's a key in a chest. I say, okay, there's a key in a chest there sitting on a dresser. I don't know what it goes to. I have to have a bigger picture of where that key is. So what I can do is expand my view. As we talked about before, there's a street view to the parade. Then there's the high-rise building perspective. And then there's the helicopter perspective. I can see from start to finish. Right? So the broader I have the ability to expand my electrical waveform, my frequency, then I can pick up on anything else transmitting. So I may be able to see that key in a past perspective, if you will. I can see the person who put it there, even though it's already happened, because past, present, future are happening together. So all I have to do is adapt to that frequency. And if I can see that frequency, then I can see the person who put it there. I can keep rewinding or reviewing, right? Remote reviewing, and go all the way back and keep tracing that energy as it had moved. But it's still moving. I know that's confusing right now for some. So remote viewing, it's just energy. It's electromagnetism, right? And the more I'm able to view or see or observe this energy from a panoptic perspective, not just from a synoptic or mental or a myopic from the physical realm, I am able then to have more abilities to transport or go through different portals in different dimensions, because I'm welcome in a lot of these, because I don't put meaning to it unless I have a meaning to it, or unless there's a meaning explained to me. Make sense? I just go in there and I observe. So that's why we have here see or observe. Observe is I'm just there to serve. Bob and serve. The word serve in there, which is also verse. So I'm just there to adapt to their verse, and they welcome me because I'm not there to change them. I'm not there to say they're right or wrong. It's not a religion. I'm not trying to sell them on earth religion. I'm just there as an observer, or as we talked about yesterday, a reporter. Right? I'm just porting. I'm going around just like I'm reviewing. I'm reporting. Right? So I can see energy move. I can see your energy move. I can see people's energy move into the future, the past, because there is no future or past. It's just one big gigantic ball or bubble. So I can put my consciousness, I can focus my consciousness on 30 years ago or 30 years in the future. Now, everything I see, I may not know what I'm seeing because I don't have a frame of reference. Just like in the old days, they saw UFOs, UAUs, and all these other foreign bodies in the sky. They can only describe it in the form of reference that they had back then. And just like us today, we're seeing things that we can't explain. So if I go 30, 50, 500 years in the future, for what point? You see what I'm saying? There has to be a point to why I'm doing remote viewing. Right? I can just go out there and just like I can travel around different towns and see different towns and just see things. So I can go out there and remote view and just see things. If I have a purpose, right, or a service that I offer to other dimensions or here on Earth, and I have to be okay with that purpose, right? It has to resonate with me, right? I've worked for companies, I've worked for different agencies. I'll just keep it clean, and was able to do this stuff, but it was always on my terms, right? Because I'm not going to prostitute myself out because of someone else's belief system. Again, beliefs are in the past, right? It's part of the ego, which is part of control. So that's a side point, but anyway, so what we're using is not our physical eyes. We're beginning to use, in true esoteric remote viewing, we're using our insight, right? Our insight came because we were disciplined. We gained more knowledge. We got more discipline. We understand from a different perspective, or more perspectives. The more perspectives we get, the more we understand. Doesn't mean we know it all. We just have bigger perspectives. And then as I get that, I get awareness. And from awareness comes insight. Right? Go back into that video and watch that video as I break those steps down. So using my insight. My insight, I don't have eyes in my electricity. I've created these lenses called eyes, just as I can hop in someone else's and look through their lens, right? I can go underwater and I can open my eyes and it's in the ocean, it's very unclear, but then I can put a mask on or don a mask and then all of a sudden it's super clear. So my eyes are very limited. It only works on a certain frequency. It's only in the visible light spectrum. When you go in different dimensions, eyeballs aren't needed, but your insight or your insight eyes are needed. Right? We can call this your inner eye, third eye. These are all, we have to break each one of those down to understand. What I'm getting you is your esoteric electromagnetic sight. Make sense? All right, so again, understand your energy, right? So let's look at remote viewing sort of as a shark or bat, right? They use sonar. And so if a shark can be in one place and send its electromagnetism or sonar out miles and miles, same as a bat, out into the far distant or the future, right? And it can now translate or interpret through the sonar through a shape or size if it can eat it or not, or if it can consume it, right? Or if it's bigger than it, right? So bats the same thing. They all have these inner sight, right? Now, bats are, like sharks, are sort of blind. I mean, they can see, but limited. So they use their insight or their in sonar, right? So our electromagnetism that's within us, our esoteric sonar, is what's remote viewing, right? Now, I can use my eyes and ears when I'm bilocating, trilocating, whatever, to different locations, and I can hear what's going on. That's fine. But it's still working. How I hear is through the electromagnetic spectrum, the visible light spectrum, right? So multiple locations. So this is just a different realms. Again, we've been talking about the realms, right? I'm just breaking it down again. So the electrical realm, chemical realm, mechanical realm. Well, each one of these have a brain, right? The astral Shambhala has a electric brain. The astral has an electrical brain. The etherical has a brain as well, and the causal body has brains. So my esoteric has multiple brains, but they're not really multiple. It's just one big brain, but I can use different parts of the brain at different times, or activate multiple parts of the brain. Because the more parts of the brain I open up, the more portals I can open up to all at one time. Now, can it get confusing and you having 10 conversations? Yeah, it's like having 10 people around you having 10 conversations. But the more you adapt to it, now I can turn the TV on, the radio, read a book, and I can absorb them all. So hopefully that makes a little more sense, guys. But let's get into dimensional viewing. Right? We talked about remote viewing. We talked about sort of getting into dimensional, but again, diamonds, ions is that I can have a two-way conversation or two-way viewing. I can not only we've talked about first position, second, and third position in yesterday's video, and the video before. So dimensionally, I can view things from different dimensions. I can view it from the mechanical, chemical, and electrical, like we talked about. But this way, the diamond's ions and viewing is again astral, electrical, and causal. So these are dimensions, but at any time I can go to all three. Or let's say, as my mediumship is broadcasting, I'm in the middle of this. We'll call it the etherical hierarchy. The blue one here is that, let's say a person on earth is trying to manifest something or pray for something. Well, because they're praying for something, they're part of a religion. And then part of the religion is it's in the past. It's built on something from the past. Yes, even though it's happening right now. And if you understand that, then yeah, we can have a different conversation. But just we're speaking linearly because these are introduction classes. These aren't advanced classes. This is just the beginning. Right? But we got to build that foundation. So people who are praying and whatnot and trying to connect with someone on the other side is multidimensional in thought. And so lower frequency people don't have enough amplitude unless their antenna is really high that they can tap into this. But if their physical body is still blaming and faulting, then if this high electricity came into them, it would short circuit them, right? It would cause mental problems. It can cause depression. It can cause anger because that energy is coming in and it's hot. And if you're an angry person by nature, then you're just going to get even more angry, right? So what I can do is someone can come to me as a client, and then I can open up to different dimensions. Now, I may not know this person, but what I can do through that conversation and reframing with that client is at the same time tap into the other realms and say, hey, is there anyone who has insight about this person? Again, insight. And so what these other beings or realms or dimensions are going to do, again, it could be other relatives, it could be someone living, because it's all electricity. What I did when I said, does anyone have anything, I activated or magnetized the field. And so anyone who has like energy, that field or their thoughts or their perceptions will then hear my call and then will answer my call. And then that gets downloaded to me, and then I'm able to interpret information about this person. And yes, it seems like I'm a psychic, but I'm not, because it's electromagnetism. I just have different forms of communicating. And so I'm able then to take that information that's coming in visually, tactile, smell. I can get a whole version of that person's life in a second, and I can get another person's life. All this stuff comes in at one time, so it takes me a few seconds to sort of categorize it and put it in a verbal sentence and adapt to that person's wavelength of understanding, and then transmit it in a story, a symbol, an allegory, something that that person can easily or more easily understand. Right, is that making sense? So hopefully we're beginning to understand what true remote viewing is. It's re and mote, right? It's just re means again and moving. So we're able to tap into any energy that's continually moving or re-moving, right? So this hierarchy, these are just portals, right? These are just portals. We're beginning to open up different frequencies or adapting so we can hear, right? Have insight to these things, these places, these beings. So finally, the transportation, right? Transport at ion. So these are all portals we talked about, right? So we're transporting. So trans means to move as well, right? It's a transient, a train. It's just moving energy. And so there's a body that can move energy, right? The body is my thoughts. I can then, as a wagoneer, if you will, a coach driver, I can take their energy, put it in a cosmic jump drive, and transport it to a person, place, or thing, depending on what's needed and why it's needed. Right? So a portal is just port to all, or L. Anytime you see, again, we talked about earlier, A-L, E-L, O-L, U-L, just like L-U, L-U, L-E, L-A, those are all mean light, or Lucifer. And L and L just means God, but both mean light because they're both energy. I don't put anthropomorphic definitions behind either one because other than they're just electricity. If you want to call a positive hook up to a battery, to the light bulb, to the negative side as good or bad, that's on you. But for me, it's just telling current which way to go. I put an order in, I need to tell it where to go and where to come back in. So, and again, we'll get into that in the Universal Divine Circuit. So portal is just a port to El, or El means God, or Elohim, or Allah. They're all the same suffix, and it just means to a dimension, another dimension. Right now, we just generically, we can call it God, hierarchy, Shambhala, this, that, whatever. So these portals we're going to transport, right? We're going to go through these portals, which means realms that I can access. I can open up doorways. If I was open to all the frequencies all the time, it's way too much for my physical shell. So I close these doors. If I'm not necessarily in these realms and not using them, then they're all closed. They're normally closed. Only when I want to access them do I open them, right? 1 and 0, right? Or 0, 1. 0 is normally closed until it opens, and then it becomes a 1, right? So these doors are naturally closed until I have the ability or the frequency or the key, same thing, key, frequency, a piano key, a frequency. I can then turn on, amp up my energy and open or adapt to that frequency, and then start sifting through the information I want, or requesting ions, requesting information, right? So then I have to transmit, right? This is going to be according to my mission. I'm not just going to go out there and do things haphazardly. I have to have a reason for why I'm doing this, right? And so I'm going to transmit because I'm missing ions, so I want to gather more ions and have more life experiences here on Earth, right? So then that, once I get them moving, then there's going to be a transit, right? Transient, right? So these ions, or it, or that, or thou, I'm moving energy, or that. I'm moving that into this, to Shambhala, to hierarchy, into God, and then into my consciousness, or my natural from the supernatural body. That means manifesting. Okay? And I can see this process by remote viewing. Right? So then I can report. I report back to these other beings, other dimensions. I share with them. I download my information and my observations the way I observe them. And then they look at that and go, wow, they view that. They look at how I moved the energy, how I collected it, how I behaved with it, how I interpreted it. These are all ions, remember? And so they gather these ions because I'm a reporter. I hand them my assignment, right? I'm saying, here, view. Y'all can either step into me, view it that way, or I can just jump drive it to you, or however you want to look at this computer speak. And so they download that information just as I download their information. It's an exchange. Right? I'm changing it, exchange. So here I'm changing in my energy to adapt to y'all, then y'all change and adapt to me. Make sense? So that's reporting, energy in motion, and then the report, duty, service, like I just talked about. So there's a galactic community, or communicating with these unities, these other beings, these other collectives, whatever you want to call these things. They're just the ability to transport. So by breaking these words down, we're breaking the frequency down. We're breaking the cow down into steaks. I'm breaking down all these different dimensions and portals, right? Each one of these are different realms, and I'm breaking this stuff down so it's more manageable, right? That it's not going to overload you, or you're going to jump to an old system of belief and say, oh my God, I'm being possessed, or oh my God, my body's on fire. And blame or fault this, what I'm teaching. And again, it's just electricity. You can't blame or fault electricity, it's just energy. Your interpretation of it is what you're blaming or faulting or being the victim of, right? So again, we're not talking about physical stuff that happens to people. This is electrical, right? How people manifest energy is how they are going to manage, or how they're going to experience it, and then how they're going to interpret it. We all do this. And the more you have the ability to get out of a loop, be it months, decades, whatever, later, you'll continually loop this information until you're ready to unloop it. Make sense? So hopefully this is giving you some information, or more information about what true remote viewing is. We can go in another lesson. You have to leave me a comment below if you want me to go further into the practices. By yesterday going from position 1 to position 2 and position 3, that was helping you to remote view. Now quickly, I can easily say, I want you to go back to a fun event that happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Put your thoughts into that position. Right? deposit those ions, activate those. They're floating around somewhere right now in the Akashic records, right, in your archives. Pull that down and be with that fun, that joy. Be in the time. Is it slower or faster than present moment time? Right? Now hold that space of that fun. Now I want you to go 20 or 30 years in the future and think about a fun you would love to have that's in the same frequency as the fun you had back then. And create a new fun. Right? If you had a wedding here, now you're beginning to see your kids' weddings 30 years from now. Right? That energy, or whatever that is for you. That you went on your first boat trip when you were 5, and now you're 50, and now you're going on another boat trip. Right? See those together. At the same time, who's seeing that? Who's observing those two? Well, you are in the middle, the medium. You're the mediumship. So at one time, you were able to be in 3 different places at once. Make sense? All right, guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Love each and every one of you. Hopefully this is helping. If it is, start leaving me some comments. I'd be happy to see some of these. And until next time, guys, see ya.